What's happening, people? It is your boy, Tony B. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Poetry, Politics, and Life, where we bear it all. I am your host, Tony Briscoe. We gonna get right into it. Let's go and welcome back.
Yeah, what's happening, beautiful people? Man, podcasting has been a journey for me to be consistent in all of that. But guess what? I passed my Security Plus exam that took over my life for 3.5 months, and I am ready to be consistent. So thank you for allowing me to be in your space, in your ears, even if it's only one of you listening right now. There is so much going on in the world. Gun violence across this country has been bananas. Texas, Indianapolis, Chicago, Ohio, you name it, it's happening. And nobody's doing anything about it. Because I said in my song Trump Card, us Christians love our guns and we tell people to keep calm. So no poem today. I just want to really talk and share openly with you about some things I've been dealing with, conversations that I've been having, especially in these Clubhouse streets, or you can call it hallways as they do on the Clubhouse app. With the recent shooting of 13-year-old Adam Toledo, there's still continued division in our country. People are asking, how is the police officer doing who shot this young man? Several videos are out, several angles to view from. I have someone I consider a friend. She's not African American. I believe she is Arab American. And she asked me that I watch every angle of the videos that were released by COPA. And that's the civilian oversight, something about police accountability, yada, yada, yada. Okay. What I said to her was, I have access to all the videos. I've seen the videos, the many angles of the video. But one angle that I don't see is when the officer asked that young 13-year-old boy, a child who was out under the supervision of an adult, be him a criminal or not is irrelevant. He was outside with an adult. Whether he was gang affiliated or not, who cares? What I did see was a police officer ask a young man to turn around with his hands up. And what I saw after that was a young man who complied and turned around with his hands up. And what I heard was a police officer fire his gun as soon as that young man turned around with his hands up. With no weapon, by the way. One round to the chest. I will not deal with the idiotic alderman who said the police officer showed great restraint. It was a dumb comment. I watched in pain as those of a true human nature and background would, just like we all watched in horror when Derek Chauvin had his knee on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 26 seconds. A long, slow, agonizing death and murder. I saw life leave the body of a child. Not a gang member, not a wayward kid, not a troubled young man. I saw life leave the body of a child. And what are people asking? Has anybody checked on the police officer? Now, I'm not so insensitive. I'll talk about that in a minute. What that police officer must be feeling. But I know one thing he's not feeling. He's not feeling the loss of a child. He's not going to a funeral of his child. A police officer didn't put a bullet through his child. Well, so while I'm sure psychologically he may be dealing with something, he's not dealing with that. We often act like we were not doing crazy things when we were 13 years old, as if our hormones were not going crazy, as if we were not making choices and decisions that impact our lives. You know the difference between the inner city and the suburbs is? They don't tell the tales of the suburbs. I have a friend who's white, who teaches in the suburbs, in the northern suburbs of Illinois. You know what happens when they catch a white kid with cocaine in school? A parent conference. You know what happens with a black kid with weed on him in school? He gets locked up, handcuffed in front of his peers, and thrown into the back of a police car. That's the difference between how they treat white suburban kids and inner city black and brown kids. I was in a school that's named after a black leader. And I walk into a classroom of a white teacher, and she has all white women on the wall. And I'm appalled, and I'm disgusted. I don't have an issue with you having white women who have reached the level or status of acclaim in this country on the wall. But if you are in a school that's named after a black woman, surely you can have a picture of a 99.9% African American school. You can have a picture of at least who the building is named after on the wall. These are the subtle hints of racism and microaggressions that we deal with every day of our freaking lives in America. A country I fought for, by the way. A country my grandfather fought for, by the way. A country that I love, by the way. These are the things we deal with. And so when I go and report it to the administration, there's a problem here. There's an issue that needs to be corrected immediately. And so when I go back into that same school 2 weeks later and I walk into that classroom and I still see only a picture of white women on the wall, I go back. And I said, the first time I brought this to your attention, it was a teacher problem. But here we are 2 weeks later, I'm bringing it to you again. Now it's an administrative problem. So if you don't do something about this, I'm going to wring some heads at the corporate office to do something about this. It's not ironic that same white teacher resigned within a month. Because some of them should not be in front of our babies. Let's call that what it is. We are living in an age where we do hold teachers more accountable than we hold police officers. When a student fails, the teacher wasn't good enough. When a police officer kills a kid, the parent wasn't good enough. When inner city violence hits, we don't do enough. Is it ever enough? We fight wars on so many fronts all day in the inner city. A man who more than likely saved my Navy career when a white officer was harassing me, picked me up, took me outside and said, do not let this white man destroy your career. I watched as other black officers in the Navy witnessed this, the actions of this, and said nothing. Why? Because more than likely, there were ramifications for them as well. But the same friend who saved my career also took the life of an unarmed black man. If you look up the shooting of Bobby Russ, a Northwestern football player who was killed, you'll understand what I'm talking about when this problem of police being trigger happy, in this case, an African-American police officer, but a majority that we see televised white police officers quick to pull the trigger. Lest we forget, in Cleveland, Ohio, where you can conceal carry, 12-year-old Tamir Rice was murdered in a drive-by by a police officer. Before he could even ask the kid a question, he pulled the trigger on him while the car was still moving. We fight these wars every day with police brutality. The second war we fight is stories like my brother's, whose son was murdered last year in cold blood at the age of 18 outside of his home in Arizona. I'm not going to get into the details of that. I spent today in tears for 45 minutes thinking about my nephew. Not going to get into all that. But make no mistakes, the plight of African Americans, of black people, of Moors, whatever label you want to give us, and maybe more is the more appropriate, so we can have some sense of identity. Some would say Israelite, so we can have a closer identity with Yahweh, Jah. Our PTSD in this country is real. And I don't see a lot of people worried about the life of 13-year-old Adam Toledo. All they're saying is that he was a gangbanger. And whether he had his hands up or not, whether he had a gun in his hand or not, which he didn't, by the way, deserved to die. We don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. Every day, we wake up in this country being considered a minority. We have present traumatic stress disorder in this country. Zone improvement plans did exactly what they were created to do: separate African Americans from white Americans. So eventually they could come back and redline these areas and gentrify these areas and, hey, let's lock them in closer together. They're not dying fast enough, so let's tear down all of these projects which house hundreds and let them go and stay in the areas that are pretty developed and let them kill each other. Let's just mix the gangs with the gangs, mix the gang schools with the gang school. Let's just do it. And we'll make the people who we put in charge of it black. And we'll tell them they can't say a word. I got facts. I've talked to the people who put the plan together to shut down the projects. They were black, under orders of a mayor. They were told, do not talk to the Chicago Housing Authority about where we're going to put people. Because if you do, they're going to hold us accountable to what we're doing. No, we're going to keep this Small enough so when they do ask, it'll be too late. We'll help them turn against each other. We will send in white teachers to teach them. We'll send in white police officers to control them. We'll send in white firefighters to save them. And we'll let other races create business and make sure that they have the capital backing to go open up the dry cleaners, open up the Chinese food stores, open up the Arab, Middle Eastern owned gas stations, opened up the Indian owned Dunkin' Donuts and Subways. We'll let every other race come in so even they can come in and say, you know what, these black people just are not working hard enough for themselves. They're not working hard enough to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. But Dr. King told an NBC reporter it's great to tell somebody to pull up their bootstraps, but you forgot you left them barefoot in this country. Yeah, we'll let the other races create businesses. And if we do give them a loan for their businesses, hey, guess what we're going to do? We're going to charge them an interest rate that's so high and ridiculous, they'll never be able to pay it back. And eventually they'll have to sell all of their grocery stores. But we'll make sure that if another race, ethnicity, or culture of immigrants come here, we'll make sure they can take it over. We'll give them tax breaks that we don't give to the black people in this country. And you know what? We're going to set up schools. We want the higher class Negroes. So we're going to set up a selective enrollment schools to separate them from the rest of the kids who are smart, but they don't test well. We'll let them get caught up in the crossfire. Yeah. Let's do this. And let's make rules to expel black students at a high proportion. And what we'll do is we'll build a rift between them and the Latino community so they can feel that when immigrants are coming here, legally or illegally, not going to get into all that, we'll make them feel that the country's doing more for them than that they are for black people, which in some truth is real. But let them keep calling themselves black, the color of a crayon, because it keeps their identity in a rotation of confusion. This is life and how we feel in this country. We are tired. Tupac Shakur. We got whites killing blacks. We got cops killing blacks. And we got blacks killing blacks. And stuff is just gonna get worse. I wish I had the words that could have saved my nephew's life. I mentor black and brown students every week. I've done so since 2014. And I couldn't save my own. I listened to a friend today whose son was murdered at the hands of a black man who's angry and he's hurting. And all the work that he's done for 15 plus years in the community, helping other people stay out of jail, stay off the streets, and he could not save his son's life. These are all the things that we're dealing with in society. But it's not until it hits home, or I shouldn't say home, I should say downtown Chicago, where the affluent live, when they were inconvenienced by the rioting that took place. Welcome to our world. When Asians are being attacked throughout this country by imbeciles and idiots, it's Stop Asian Hate. When black people have been brutally murdered. When that Asian officer was raping black women, there was no grave outcry of support for us. But you know what we are as black people? Man, we are the most forgiving, most loving, least hateful people in this country. We will help others come up by the bootstraps and hope that one day maybe they will return the favor, and it never returns. And maybe at 49 years old, that's my mistake. I expect people to change, when in fact, I should expect people to be exactly who they show me they are. I just wanted to share today, family. I'm coming back on the air with a vengeance. But you can know that my love will outweigh my rage. My thoughtfulness will outweigh my disgust. I want to close, and I'm paraphrasing the former superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. And you should note that the superintendent has no power to fire a police officer. But I want to paraphrase something I believe, and I'll say I believe because I don't want to put words in the former superintendent's mouth. He told the media one night, "Your problem is not with me. Your problem is not with my police officers. Your problem is with the people who write the laws that I am called to enforce, and the policies that I am told to uphold as part of my job as superintendent of the Chicago Police Department." Not many folks talked about that statement. You know why? Because legally, police can only get away with what they're allowed to get away with by the laws that are written. Alderman, wake up. There's a generation coming for your job. Congressman, wake up. There's a generation coming for your job. Democrats, wake up. There's some young people coming for your job. And the only politician, and there's some great ones out there, Republican and Democrat, there's some great ones. But the only one I know personally is the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois. And she may get on me for bringing her name up. So I won't say her name. I'll just say her title. Y'all can look it up. Y'all know who it is. Her work in juvenile justice started 25 years long before she became the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois. The first African-American woman to hold that post. I know her work. I know her labor. I know her love. I was with her after Darion Albert got killed to go and talk to the principal, to go and be a part of a peace circle. I know her fruit. But for the rest of you who have been stagnant, who've been spineless, you can believe a generation of millennials. They're coming. And they're coming hard. And they're coming fast. And if you are not ready to do the work and feel the pressure of white supremacy come against the changes you want to make, step down. resign, and move the hell out of the way. Because there's a generation who's not afraid to die for righteousness. It's Tony Briscoe, fam. I'm out.